Hello everyone, I'm a tabletop hobbyist and today we're going to be talking about the Death Guard Codex. Now, today's going to be a little bit different than what I normally do, but it's kind of similar to my tournament review where I just kind of rambled on about how I did at the tournament. You all like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll go ahead and get into it. So, who are the Death Guard? The Death Guard are a bunch of really tough, really sick, shambling type dudes who like to get up in your face and kind of cough on you and really just make a mess of your whole day. If that sounds like a playstyle that's interesting to you, then I'd really suggest the Death Guard. If you're watching this video, you probably already kind of knew that about the Death Guard. But we're going to go ahead and start with the detachment abilities, and I've got the codex right here with me. First things first, inexorable advance. The Death Guard do not incur penalties to moving through difficult terrain. So if they want to walk through a forest, there's no -2. If they want to go through a crater, there's no -2. And that's because the Death Guard are really good at walking places. Even though they only move 5 inches, they are very good at walking places. It's kind of like the thing that their Legion does best. After that, they have like mortars and stuff, and they're really good at getting people the plague. Uh, the plague companies are pretty interesting. I only run one, and that's Mortarian's Anvil, because they have the Glooming Bloat, which turns off rerolls within contagion range for your Warlord, and for 2 CP, you can spread that out with Flash Outbreak. The Inexorable, they're nice. I've seen a lot of people enjoy those. And the Wretched is something else I would consider running because I like to run a bunch of Psychers. And Mortarian hates Psychers, that's why they're called the Wretched, blah blah blah. You know, it doesn't really matter. This whole codex actually has like half the book dedicated to these weird words with pictures, and I just don't get it. I just don't understand. Uh, the stratagems, the way I feel about the stratagems is they're all pretty good. There's a couple stratagems that you're going to use multiple times per game, like the Dead Walk Again, where you're bringing back Poxwalkers once per unit. Mutant Strain. Mutant Strain's always wonderful because it makes Poxwalkers do mortal wounds on 6s to hit, 1s to themselves. On 1s, they do mortal wounds to themselves. Uh, the Blightning, that's pretty fun. Your grenades turn into pistols, so you can fire it into melee combat. Virulent Rounds turns your bolt weapons into plague weapons. So if you have a unit of 10 Blightlord Terminators, you can give them all plague weapons. And now they're re-rolling if they're within, 6 inches of, an Arch Contaminator on their wound rolls with all of their plague weapons. So it makes it to where the Bolter actually has a little bit more teeth to it, because I'd assume you're going into a tougher target with those kind of shots. Blight Bombardment is fun. I've never used it because there's never been a time where I was ahead with command points and also, uh, you know, at a place where I could use Blight Bombardment. I mean, I probably could have used it this last game I was in to like flush out my opponent, but it would have been 3 command points and not really worth it. So I like the stratagems. I like all the different plague companies, which are basically like Space Marine chapters. They're all very interesting. They all kind of have their own feel to them. However, I do only play Mortarian's Anvil because I'm all about the hard bodies and the sickness. The deadly pathogens, they've all experienced a point reduction in the past couple FAQs. The one that I really like is Explosive Outbreak. Unmodified hit rolls of 6 score 1 additional hit. That's nice for exploding 6s. You know, you throw that on a Lord of Contagion and give him the Warp Insect, the Warp Hive Relic. He's re-rolling all of his hits. He's hitting on 3s, and 6s explode, and he's also re-rolling all of his wounds. And that's just so much fun because it really stresses out other people when suddenly there's, like, when he was making like 5 attacks, and now there's 7 coming at you. Or 8 even sometimes. So it's just, it's very interesting. Befouling Runoff. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, the target does not receive the benefits of cover against that attack. It has its place, but you know, you can only put these things on unit champions, and I doubt you're going to put a weapon like that you know is really effective on a unit champion outside of like a melee weapon. However, I do like Viscous Death. Each time you roll to determine the number of attacks made with this weapon, you can reroll the result. The Foul Blight Spawn with Viscous Death. The Foul Blight Spawn has a Strength 7, AP minus 2, 2 damage flamer, and the fact that you can give him a free reroll every time you fire that weapon, it's just so much fun. It can give you chip damage into a dreadnought. It can get rid of some space marines because they'll only be toughness 3. Maybe it'll force a transhuman in an inopportune spot. There's a lot of places where you can use it. After the deadly pathogens, we move on to the warlord traits. I like almost all of the warlord traits. The 5-up Feel No Pain with Revoltingly Resilient is okay. The Living Plague, not that good. I just read it. While an enemy unit is within 3 inches of this warlord, that unit cannot be affected by the aura abilities of units from your opponent's army. Which, I mean, that's fine, but I feel as though if you're in that situation, you have bigger problems. Hulking Physique, add 1 to the wounds characteristic. 1 to 3 to wound automatically fails, so always has to be a 4-up. Love that. Love that. Everyone loves that. Okay, Arch Contaminator, love it, especially on a Foul Blight Spawn. I'll pay a command point for it every single time, even in Nephilim. That's just because it's consistent and it's good. It really helps increase the consistency of your army. Rotten Constitution, add 1 to the toughness characteristic of this warlord. Most Death Guard units are already pretty tough. If the AP is 1 or 2, it is now 0 instead. Could be cool. But, you know, Armor of Contempt exists, so 1s are already 0s, and 2s are, you know, 1s. So I'm not really that worried about it. Foul Effluence. While an enemy is within 6 inches of this warlord at the end of your movement phase, roll 1d6 for that unit. On a 4-up, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Okay. I mean, that could be cool if, like, your opponent was a bunch of small 1-wound model units. I like Harlequins, you know, that could be really useful if you catch them. Could kill 1. The relics. Now, the Putrid Periapt, I love it. It gives you an additional psychic power that you know. And after successfully manifesting a psychic power, you can regain up to D3 lost wounds. And it'll really help after you perils yourself. Coffee. The Reaper of Glorious Entropy. This is a strength times 2, AP minus 3, damage 3 weapon. It's a plague weapon. And on an unmodified wound roll of 6, it inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. I love it. Especially on a Lord of Contagion with the Warp Insect Hive, because then you're also rerolling the wound roll, fishing for 6s. You're probably wounding most things on 2s. So it's just fun. And then anything that goes through, AP minus 3 into most targets, AP minus 2 into a Space Marine, you got 3 damage. Even into a Dreadnought, that's still 2 damage, plus a mortal wound on top, probably. Because you're probably going to hit everything with this guy. The Plague Skull of Golothala. I don't know if I said that one right. Once per battle, at the end of your movement phase, the bearer can use this relic. If it does, select 1 enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer and roll 7d6. For each 4 to 5, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. For each 6, that unit suffers D3 mortal wound. It's fun. I've never seen it used properly. I've never brought it to use it because I've got other things to do with my things. Because I'm trying to make a reasonably competitive list. If I was just having fun, I'd take the Plague Skull. But I've never had fun a day in my life. It's not allowed, actually. Fugaris' Helm, add 3 to the range of the bearer's aura abilities to a maximum of 12. That's cool. Anyway, the Toll Keeper, Unmodified hit rolls of 6 score an additional hit. Now you cannot combine that with Explosive Outbreak, but it's a Talisman relic, and it's actually pretty good. You could use that to have an entire unit of Blight Lords or Death Shroud with exploding 6s, which is kind of nice. Especially if you have them with the Bale Swords at AP -3. It's only 1 damage though, so it's a Revolting Stench Vats. Auto take if you're taking the Foul Blight spot. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of the bearer, that unit cannot make use of any rules that allow it to fight first, and never counts as having made a charge move this turn, irrespective of any abilities that unit may have. Woo! I love it. Every single time, Space Marines just lost their shock assault the second they charge into you. They have to come within 6 inches of this guy. So if they end their charge within 6 inches, they lose their charge. So they're fighting normally. It means you get to activate first and you get to kill their Space Marines. And then they don't get that extra attack that they get from Shock Assault. If you were fighting World Eaters, they would lose that extra attack that they get. If you're fighting Black Legion, they no longer have that +1 to hit because they no longer count as having charged. It's very devastating. Very devastating. And since they're fighting normally and probably going into a much harder target than they want to be going into, let's just say that's yours. It's not free, but it is yours. The Suppurating Plate. The bear has a 2-up save each time an enemy unit fights after it makes attacks. If the bear lost any wounds as a result of those attacks, roll 1d6. On a 2-up, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. I'd consider putting this on the Action Monkey Demon Prince, but it's very situational. And you're only doing a maximum of 1 mortal wounds, and it's only if you lose wounds, but it's also on a 2-up if you even do that mortal wound, and a lot of people will just roll a 1 there. So the Plague Bringer. This can replace a Bale Sword or Demonic Plague Blade or Plague Knife or Power Sword. It basically makes it Strength +2, AP -3, 2 damage. And each time you destroy a model with that weapon, it counts as 2 for the purposes of morale. So you kill, let's say, 2 Space Marines with it. That counts as having killed 4 Space Marines. So now those Leadership 8 models are failing on a 5-up. And then they have to go on to make morale. So that's kind of cool. Now we're going to move on to the Psychic Powers. The Contagion Discipline. A couple of duds, but they do all have their use. So I guess they're not really duds. It's just they're not necessarily the most optimal. I like Miasma of Pestilence. It goes off on a 6-up. And you get to select 1 Death Guard unit within 18 inches of the Psyker. Subtract 1 from the hit roll. That's great. You put on a unit of Blight Lords, no one wants to shoot at those Blight Lords anymore because it's not as efficient. You put it on a unit of Poxwalkers, and those Poxwalkers may survive a little bit longer or keep around a couple more so that you can do the Dead Walks again and make sure that you get actions off further off in the board. One thing that I like to do is my ass with some Poxwalkers, Dead Walk again them, and kind of daisy chain out to the closest objective so I can get a Spread the Sickness in turn 1 or turn 2, in a No Man's Land objective. Gift of Contagion goes off on a 5, 18 inches. Select an enemy unit within 18 inches of this Psyker. Until the start of your next Psychic phase, subtract 1 from the strength characteristics of the models. That part is interesting against a really strong target, but it's not very interesting against things that you're probably going to be fighting on the normal as Death Guard. If you're at a tournament or something, Yeah, the problem isn't that things are strong, the problem is that there's a lot of things. But, let's read the second half of this ability. If your roll was 8 or higher, subtract 1 from the strength and attack characteristic of that model instead. Of everyone in that unit instead. So now, those no longer counting as charging Sanguinary Guard. Y'all, I've been scarred. are making like 3 attacks instead of a million. And that's a lot more survivable. If you want to run the odds, roll 3 dice versus rolling a million, see how many times you survive. Plague Wind. Now, Plague Wind is a very interesting psychic ability, but I just struggle to use it. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 18, goes off on a 6 by the way. Roll 1d6 for each model in that unit. For each 6, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. If the result of that psychic test was 9 up, or 9 or higher, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound for each 5 up instead. It's okay. It kind of sucks because you have to cast it, and then you also have to roll dice again and hope for 6s. And you got better things to do. Putrescent Vitality, auto take, auto include, +1 strength, +1 toughness, goes off on a 7. Curse of the Leper. Curse of the Leper is much better than Plague Wind. If manifested, select the closest enemy unit that is within 18 inches of, invisible to this psyker. Roll 7d6s for each dice result that exceeds the enemy's toughness. It suffers 1 mortal wound. So, let's suppose that someone's got a bunch of Space Marines in front of you. I don't know why I always go with Space Marines. Let's go with Guardsmen this time. Let's suppose someone's got a bunch of T3 Guardsmen in front of you, and it got a unit of 10. And you're within, like, let's say 6 inches of them on turn 3. Well, those Guardsmen are now toughness 2, and you're probably going to kill 7 Guardsmen, because they're going to be taking mortal wounds for every dice that you roll that is higher than their toughness. And that's just fun. Another thing in the last psychic spell is Gift of Plagues. Gift of Plagues goes off on a 6, got an 18-inch range. Until the start of your next psychic phase, add 6 to the range of any contagion abilities. That glooming bloat that was at 6 inches in turn 3 is now 12 inches, and if you throw it on Poxwalkers, okay, if you throw it on Poxwalkers, they have to drop their entire arm. They have to shoot at the Poxwalkers until they get their rerolls back. You throw it on a unit of Blightlord Terminators, or maybe Death Shroud, and now, if you include, it's going to be 2 command points to throw the contagion to them. But now they have to invest way more than they wanted to into killing Terminators, because they're just so resilient. Y'all, my dog has come over here and is being pet, and that's why I kind of slowed down a little bit. But they're just so resilient, and the fact that there's no rerolls of hits or wounds within 12 inches, my goodness. That is nasty. It is foul. And now after that, there's the Crusade rules. We're just going to skip over that and go straight to the data sheets. Alright, we have now reached the data sheets. Let's talk about the abilities of the Death Guard. I know we touched on it a little bit earlier, but now we're going to get into Plague Weapon. Plague Weapon. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, reroll a wound roll of 1. Remorseless. Each time a combat attrition test is taken for this unit, ignore any or all modifiers. Malicious Volleys. Instead of following the normal rules for rapid-fire weapons, models in this unit shooting rapid-fire bolt weapons make double the numbers of the attacks if any of the following apply. The shooting model's target is within half the weapon's range. That's the normal rapid-fire rule. The shooting model is infantry, and its unit remains stationary in your previous movement phase. Okay? The shooting model is a Terminator. Terminators are always rapid firing. Okay? Disgustingly resilient. And this is the part that just kind of caps off the disgusting Death Guard cake. And it's just a cake with like maggots and flies, and it's green, but it is topped with whipped cream and a nice, beautiful big cherry. It's disgustingly resilient. Each time an attack is allocated to a model in this unit, subtract 1 from the damage characteristic of that attack to a minimum of 1. So if you're getting shot with 2 damage weapons, it becomes a 1 damage weapon. 3 damage, 2 damage, 4 damage, 3 damage, 5 damage, 4 damage, 6 damage, 5 damage. It is very good because it means that usually the most efficient choice for killing like other similar units is not the most efficient choice for killing you. Like an overcharged Tau ion blaster would have to be fired into your Terminators in order to properly kill a Terminator. Anyone else, they could just fire in their normal shots because those do 3 damage. But in order to flat kill you, they would need to fire a 4 damage shot into you in hope that you don't make it on your invuln. And Terminator armor people have Teleport Strike. That's your deep strike ability, 9 inches on the board away from enemy models. So, the Death Guard Demon Prince, he's got a 3-up save, he's got Strength 7, T6, weapon skill, wounds of 8, and 6 attacks. Separating Plate may be on him, put him up to a 2-up. That's very interesting. But he's got 1 cast. He's got the Hellforged Sword, which is +1, AP -3, 3 damage. So he's hitting at Strength 8 into Toughness, 7 or lower targets normally. Maybe Toughness 8 if you're fighting like a Land Raider for some reason. And he's doing 3 damage. So if he's going into Knights, he could severely cripple a Knight. He cannot have any of the cool stuff like explosive outbreaks or anything like that. I'm not really sure why. But, that's just what they say. He's got a 5-up invuln. That's not very fun, but it's because he's a demon. He gets the demon save rather than the 4-up invuln of a normal character. Typhus, I don't own Typhus, but Typhus is actually very good. He's got the Vector of Disease, so he adds 3 inches to all contagion range abilities. He's the host of the Destroyer Hive, so enemy units within 6 inches of him, you roll 1d6 on a 2-up. That unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and this is in your command phase, by the way. Master of the Dead Who Walk. While a friendly Poxwalker unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the strength characteristic of that model. So your Poxwalkers just went from strength 4 to strength 5, strength 3 to strength 4. And then if you Putrescent Vitality, strength 4 to strength 5. And that's it's kind of interesting. I'm not going to say it's good, but it's interesting. Herald of Nurgle. This model can be included in any Death Guard detachment without preventing other units in that detachment from carrying a Plague Company contagion. That's cool. That just basically means he's not going to stop you from getting your Mortarian's Anvil contagion or an Execrable contagion. Also, Typhus is the reason why the Death Guard are the Death Guard. He was basically like, yo, I know how to get through the warp. We don't need no psychers. Let's put them all to the sword. And everyone was just like, yeah, Typhus, that sounds like a good idea. And look at them now. The Death Guard Chaos Lord, we're not going to talk about. The Lord of Virulence, if you take this guy, nah. He's got a weapon skill and a ballistic skill of 2, which is nice, but the fact that his gun is a flamer means that ballistic skill goes to waste. He doesn't have a cast or anything like the Demon Prince does, so he can't really do anything for you. The only thing that he does is he reduces the cost of Blight Bombardment, and while a friendly Plague Company core unit is within 6 inches of this model, each time a model in that unit makes a ranged attack with a Plague weapon on an unmodified wound roll of 6, improve the armor penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. Nah, I just wouldn't do it. He has a place if you're going against the Horde, but I'd say right now, during the Armor of Contempt, his aura ability is the most interesting thing about him. But his Power Claw is, times 2, AP -3, 2 damage. It's a plague weapon, but you're subtracting 1 from your hits. Now, the Lord of Contagion, that's the next data sheet you come to, and I love him. Oh, he can either have a Man Reaper or a Plague Reaper. The Man Reaper is the scythe that Death Shroud have, so it can either cleave or it can scythe and do 2 attacks instead of 1. He's got 5 attacks base, so you could be making 10 attacks with the fucking what's it called? With the explosive outbreak, you could have those 6s exploding, do a bunch of attacks, and it's a plague weapon, so you're re-rolling wound rolls anyway. My goodness, I love him so much. He's just so great. The Plague Reaper, strength times 2, AP minus 3, D3. Subtract 1 from the attack's hit rolls, but you're probably re-rolling everything anyway. And he's got the Orb of Desiccation. It's a strength 4, AP minus 1, 2 damage weapon. It can only be shot in once per battle, and it's a plague weapon. If you turn it into a pistol, it becomes a pistol 6 instead of 3d3. So you're getting average number, actually slightly above average number of shots from it, and you can fire it into combat then. Let's just say he's great. He's a vector of disease, so he adds 3 inches to the range of all contagion abilities. So in turn 1, his if he has the Glooming Bloat, it's 4 inches. In turn 2, it's 6 inches. In turn 3, it's 9 inches. In turn 4 onwards, it is 12 inches always. So within 12 inches, there are no rerolls allowed from the Lord of Contagion. And that's just why he's so much better than the Lord of Virulence. Like, no disrespect for the Lord of Virulence. I bet people do still need paperweights, but I just wouldn't take him over a Lord of Contagion. I wouldn't take a Lord of Contagion over a Demon Prince. Well, that's not true. I would take the Lord of Contagion over the Demon Prince if I didn't want to do Psychic Interrogation as one of my secondaries. If I wanted to take more Death Guard secondaries and like Fleeing Vectors, Despoiled Ground, and Spread the Sickness, then I'd take a Lord of Contagion. But since I usually do Spoiled Ground, Spread the Sickness, Psychic Interrogation, the fact that the Demon Prince is kind of a throwaway psyker and also has a little bit of utility to him with his wings and ability to jump out and strike makes him a little bit more interesting to me. The Death Guard Sorcerer and Terminator armor, we're just going to ignore that. Malignant Plaguecaster. Malignant Plaguecaster, I don't have any facts to back this up, y'all. That's a sign that someone's about to say something incredibly stupid. The best psyker in the game. He can manifest 2 psychic powers. They know Smite, and on a 7 or higher, the closest enemy unit within 12 inches suffers 1 mortal wound. Now, I like to take 2 Malignant Plaguecasters. Means you're getting 4 casts. So the first cast I do, Miasma of Pestilence, then Smite. And that's on the first Plaguecaster. The second Plaguecaster does like Putrescent Vitality, then Smite. 2 of those go off on 6s. 1 of them goes off on a 4. 1 goes off on a 5. And the other one goes off on a 7. The likelihood that you roll a 7 or higher is like 50% on 2 dice. So, it means that half the time you are going to do an extra mortal wound in addition. So, while you're casting your psychic powers, you're just brapping on people. And then, even in melee combat, he's actually got a bit of teeth to him. He's got a corrupted staff that is +3, -1 damage, D3, and it's a plague weapon. Unlike the stupid sorcerer and Terminator armor, who doesn't have a plague weapon, because he sucks. He's only got 4 wounds, but, I mean, that means you can perils twice before you have to worry about it, really. And, it's just so cool, because I love them. You take 2, and your opponent's not going to get to them. It's kind of an assassination trap, Your opponent's just like, you have a lot of characters, and it's like, yeah, but these characters are behind a wall of Death Guard. Now, after that, we're finally getting into the Plague Marines. Now, Plague Marines are cool. I have a problem with my Plague Marines because I don't have the special weapons. I never got like the Plague Marines with Great Cleaver or the Plague Marines with the flails or anything like that. I just have the Plague Marines that came out of, what is it, Dark Imperium? Yeah. So I don't have all the cool things that all the other Depth Guard players get to use. But the fact that their war gear is free means that Plague Marines are really good right now. There's a little bit of a caveat to it because I'm thinking that Plague Marines are really good, but they only move 5 inches. I think if I take a unit of Plague Marines, I want to take a max size squad, and I want to put them inside of a Rhino. So that's about, 210 points for the Plague Marines, and then 80 points for the Rhino. So 290 points, but the weapons are free, and the weapons are absolutely disgusting. We've got the Mace of Contagion, which is +2, -1 D3, as in damage 3. So that's pretty cool. Each time an attack, it's a plague weapon, but it's a -1 to hit, so it's hitting on 4s. But the fact that you can just take all of them. You know, I would go through the data sheet, but you can take them all. They're doing the -1 damage thing because they're disgustingly resilient, and I mean they are overwhelming. Either your opponent will be able to deal with them, or they won't. And I mean, there's so much damage potential coming out of this unit because they're putting contagions on things, so they're reducing the toughness. So if you're going into a dreadnought, it's now T6 or T7, and you're doing probably enough wounds to kill it with any fighting from even a 5-man unit of Plague Marines with special weapons. We're going to move on to the Cultist, and then we're going to move on to the Poxwalkers. Now, I like Poxwalkers a lot. Every time you kill a model with Poxwalkers, assuming that, you've lost a couple Poxwalkers along the way, then you gain a model, to the Poxwalker squad because it's like they're getting turned into a zombie. Poxwalkers can only spread the sickness, and, okay, I said we're going to go on to the Poxwalkers. It was a little bit snide. Death Guard cultists can raise the banners, which there is a place for. But spread the sickness is giving you 11 points on some missions in like 3 turns. Whereas banners is giving you 15 and 5, supposing that you get to keep all 3 banners. And with the Death Guard, it's a little bit hard unless you're putting Plague Marines on those points. But back to the Poxwalkers. They don't take morale because it's automatically passed, and they have a 6-up feel no pain. So people shoot into them, and if it's 1 damage weaponry, there's a chance that a couple of them are going to stay alive. It's not like the Necron reanimation protocol where you roll after all the shooting's concluded. You roll as you incur the damage. So it lets you know kind of what to expect. And it's a 6-up, so it's not the best. We're going to move on to the Noxious Blightbringer. Apparently in the before times, this guy was pretty good, but now he's only adding +1 to the movement characteristic of Death Guard models within 6 inches of them, and that's fine. It'll help you move a lot faster, but it's not giving you a +1 to your charge. It's only giving a +1 to your normal moves and your +1 to your advance. And sure, the normal turn 1 order for Death Guard is advance, but you don't want to be investing 65 points into a dude that's making you advance better. While an enemy Psychic unit is within 6 of this model, subtract 1 from Psychic tests. That's not that good, because if a Psychic is within 6 inches of you, you know what they're casting? Null Zone. That's just no fun. That's no fun. While an enemy unit is within 6 inches of this model, subtract 1 from combat attrition test taken for that unit. And I mean, again, if an enemy unit is within 6 inches of that model, It's not because you moved within 6 inches of them. It's because they moved within 6 inches of you. And if someone's coming towards you, it means that they're confident in their ability to kill. You know. So, like maybe he'll have a space later, soon. You know, that's the hope. That's always the hope and the dream. Now, let's talk about the Foul Blight Spawn. I love the Foul Blight Spawn. Let's go ahead and start it with Putrefying Stink. At the start of the fight phase, you can select one enemy unit within 3 inches of this model. That unit is not eligible to fight this phase until after all eligible units from your army have done so. So, you know the Silent King? Yeah, you can have him fight last. So even his little ability, his little baby ability won't do anything to you. Because you're going to have him fighting last within 3 inches of the Foul Blight Spawn. And I love it, because you do it at the start of the fight phase. It's also got the Plague Sprayer. Assault D6, you're probably going to reroll it because of that foul runoff. It automatically hits. It's Strength 7, AP -3, Damage 2. That is literally perfect for killing Space Marines, at least before Armor of Contempt. But even after Armor of Contempt, it'll make most people sweat a little bit, because their Space Marines will be going from, their usual 3 up to a 5 up. And then it's 2 damage. So any fail is a dead Space Marine. And that's just beautiful. And then he's also got Unholy Death's Head Grenade. It's a Strength 5, AP -1, D1, and it can only be fired once per battle. I've not had any luck with it, but I feel as though if I played against opponents that had more Horde type armies, I would use it relatively frequently. The Biologist Putrefier, I've never actually used this guy. He's got an injector pistol. Each time an attack is made with this weapon against an infantry, cavalry, or beast unit, if that attack successfully wounds the target, it inflicts D3 mortal wounds in addition to any normal damage. So 1 plus D3, if it wounds, it's a Strength 4 weapon though. Going into Space Marines, you're probably going to kill a Space Marine with it. That's fine. He's got Hyper Blight Grenades, which are Strength 4 -1, 2 damage. It's a plague weapon though, so if you're within 6 inches of an Arch Contaminator, it's going to get to reroll that wound. Same with the Injector Pistol. By the way, the Injector Pistol is a 3-inch range, so Blight Rats, while Bubonic Astartes are within 6 inches of them, their Blight Grenades have AP -1 and damage characteristic of 2. Putrid Explosion, when he dies on a 4-up, he explodes 1 mortal wound to enemies. And then Foul Infusion. Once per turn, at the start of either your charge phase or the fight phase, you can select 1 friendly Plague Company core unit within 6 inches of this model. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a model in that unit makes a melee attack with a plague weapon, an unmodified wound roll of 6 inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. Each unit can only be selected for this ability once per turn. That's cool. Oh my goodness, that's cool. Okay, yo, I was talking shit. But I might have to run that guy one day. Now, next is the Tallyman. The Tallyman is interesting. He's got a plasma pistol, so he could just kill himself if you ever overcharged him. And that's kind of dumb. You're probably not going to do that. In your command phase, this model can tally for 1 friendly Plague Company core unit within 6 inches of it. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. That's kind of nice, It's a little bit interesting. Because now, it's in your command phase, eh? So, you couldn't do it on Death Shroud, because you're probably deep striking Death Shroud. You could do it for Blight Lords, because you're likely walking Blight Lords up the field. Maybe a unit of Plague Marines could get it, if, you had the ability to do it. But, and this is really interesting for Nephilim, at the start of the command phase, if this model is on the battlefield, roll 2d6. On a 7, you get 1 command point. That's cool. That's cool, and it's interesting. Now, it doesn't make me want to take a Tallyman because I haven't really been running into CP issues. The fact that you gain one in your turn and your opponent's turn means it's negligible. Plague Surgeon. Now, the Plague Surgeon can heal D3 wounds, and he's got a 6-up Feel No Pain for units within 3 inches? Oh, I'm not taking that. Okay, next. Blight Lord Terminators! I love to bloat on people with these guys. So, a 2-up into a 4-up, T5, 3 wounds. It's just disgusting. I could go on for a day about the Blight Lord Terminators, but I think what I should really just say is that they are a wonderful hammer, or they're a great anvil. Either way, if you dropped it on someone's head, they wouldn't have a good day. Death Shroud Terminators, they act really well as a scalpel. Like, I know I'm not getting in depth with these guys, but let me just tell you, it's because I love them so much, and the everything that I want to say is like, they're just great, you know? You could have a unit of 6 Death Shroud or a unit of 10 Blight Lords. Death Shroud have 4 attacks, and the champion's got 5. They're using Man Reapers, and those Man Reapers will just cut through Space Marines, they'll cut through vehicles, they'll cut through infantry, like Horde infantry, and they'll destroy elites. The fact that they spread contagions reduces toughness. It's strength 3 minus 3, 2 damage. So strength 7 going into most targets is pretty darn good. And if they have on the Chimes of Contagion, you add 3 to the contagion range of all abilities from that unit. So, if you're bringing them in on turn 3, and they're kind of close to an objective, and they survive for the rest of the game, you're definitely getting despoiled ground on a couple of, on a couple of objectives. And that's good, because you want them in your contagion range. Like, I used to not like Death Shroud. Death Shroud have definitely earned a place in my book. I love them. The Hellbrute, you don't need to take the Hellbrute. There's better things to take. Death Guard Possessed, you don't need to take those. There's better things to take. Chaos Spawn, interesting. Chaos Spawn are very interesting. They even have a stratagem built around them, and it's called Grandfatherly Influence. It increases their toughness by 1 and does something else I can't remember off the top of my head. But Chaos Spawn are very fast. They move 7 inches. So compared to a Plague Marine, they're basically rockets. And they're just interesting because they can kind of get in and they can do things. So let's go ahead and move on to the Mephitic Blighthauler. The Mephitic Blighthauler is perfect. It's basically a Contemptor Dreadnought just without the fighting ability. And if you're fighting a Contemptor Dreadnought, I mean, that's weird. I mean, it can't take the Neo-Volkites. It can't do that kind of stuff. So, but it's got the same profile, okay? That's what I mean. Weapon skill of 3. It moves 10 inches, strength 6, T7, 9 wounds, and it's got a 3-up save, plus a 5-up invuln, and disgustingly resilient. So, it's not very optimal to shoot at. You're not going to kill it in combat, probably. And it can be taken in squads of up to 3. So you can have 1 to 3 of them, and it'll just be great. It's got the Bile Spurt, which is kind of chip damage. It's strength 6, AP -1, assault D3. It's got blast. It can be fired at things within engagement range of it. But what you're really taking these things for is the multi-melta. It's got 2 shots with it, so it's firing 2 shots. It's heavy 2. Okay, anyway. It's got a crack missile and a frag missile. You're not going to fire that frag missile. But those strength 8, shots are going to do a lot of damage. And the fact that they're high damage means that they're very good to shoot at most targets. You know, you're shooting those into your opponent's threats, and then when your opponent shoots back at you, they're not having nearly as much return because of your 5-up invuln, your damage reduction, and your armor of contempt. The Fetid Bloat Drone, I was running my Fetid Bloat Drone with Plague Spitters, and I'm like, this isn't really that fun. And then I ran a Flesh Mower, and I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever. Flesh Mower gives it a strength of 6, a strength of 7. And, you know, this thing also, basically a Contemptor Dreadnought. Except, this one fights, so I guess it's not really a Contemptor Dreadnought. I don't know why a Contemptor Dreadnought is my normal basis for comparison. But anyway, strength 7, AP minus 2, 2 damage. Each time an attack is made with this weapon, make 3 hit rolls instead of 1. So, it goes from 4 attacks to 12. And it's a plague weapon. So you're rerolling once. And I just love it. Oh, it's got 2 damage, so it's killing Space Marines. And it's wounding Space Marines on 2. It's forcing Transhuman out of Primaris. Firstborn are just SOL. Plague Burst Crawler. The Plague Burst Crawler moves 9 inches, and right now it's not really worth taking, in my opinion. Seems as though a lot of 9th edition at the moment is either I can't be seen or I'm not really worth shooting at. And the Plague Burst Crawler is taking that -1 to ballistic skill, and it's giving someone +1 for their save if it's firing out of line of sight. If you're firing over a forest, it's at -1. It's just it's not very good right now, but it's a good thing to have in your collection. I don't have any because I don't know why. I just haven't gotten around to getting any, but eventually I will. It's got 2 entropy cannons, which is basically 2 normal meltas. No, they're not. It's strength 8 -4 AP, which is the melta part, but the damage is D3 plus 3, so it's a little bit better than melta until you get into half range, in which case I'd rather have melta. Well, because melta would only be doing 3 damage minimum. This thing's always going to do at least 4, and there are ways to make it to where it does flat 3, so it could always be doing 6. So never mind. Entropy cannons are better than melta. The Plague Burst Mortar is only damage 2, but it is strength 8, AP -2, and if it was damage 3, I'd be a lot more for it, but then, you know, it's disgusting. Then you just, its points go up, and it's just a lot. So, if I could, I would. Well, I wouldn't, but if I had it, I would run it once. The Land Raider, no need to take that. Predator Annihilator, any kind of Predator, don't take it. Defiler, if you want to take a Defiler, go ahead, take a Defiler. They're not really that good, though. Chaos Rhino, definitely need it because it helps your troops get to where they want to be. After that, we go on to Mortarion, and I love Mortarion. I don't own Mortarion, but he's very interesting for me, okay? He's got a movement speed of 12 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2 because he's a Primarch, strength 8, T8, he's a Primarch. Weapon wounds of 18 and 7 attacks with a 3-up save. Now, there's a lot going on with Mortarion. There's a lot going on with Mortarion, okay? He's got 1 shot coming from his plasma pistol. That's at strength 8, AP -3, 3 damage. And each time an attack is made with this weapon, if a hit is scored, draw a straight line between the closest point of this model's base or hull and that of the closest model in that target unit. Make 1 wound roll against the target unit and each other unit this line passes over. Here's the thing. That doesn't say enemy unit. That just says each unit. So, you know, be mindful. But what really matters is the fact that Mortarion's a Psyker. He gets one of the contagions from any of the plague companies. He gets to choose. He's a demon Primarch. He's got a 4-up Invuln, and he explodes. And he's always got the maximum contagion range of 9. Well, the maximum is 12, but he's always got 9 the entire game. Here's the problem. Mortarion will either be dealt with or he won't. He has 18 wounds, so he can be seen everywhere, and he's just going to get shot at. If you throw him forward, he's going to get annihilated. People like to jump Mortarion into like the middle of the board and go, haha, you can't kill him. But I mean, weight of fire and the fact that he's got a 4-up Invuln and he's only one model makes it to where he likely will die. If you just throw him up in the middle, like players are ought to do, he's going to die. You have to hold back Mortarion and get ready to jump him out and kill what needs to be killed. But see, that's my problem. He's like a lot of points, and he doesn't even have like a he can only take so many wounds per phase. Like if he could take 6 wounds per phase, I'd be a lot more interested in him, because it means that you could kill Mortarion in a turn rather than you can kill Mortarion in a phase, you know? He's just, I mean, he's got Chapter Master, that's kind of nice, but with the points that you put into Mortarion, you could instead buy more Death Shroud, you could buy more Mephitic Blight Haulers, more Plague Marines, you know, and that's just the problem. You could even dip into the Forge World range if you'd like to. And then there's the Miasmic Malignifier. This thing is a fortification, so in a competitive game, I wouldn't take it. I would put it on the field as like a, you know, interesting piece of terrain, but basically this thing is always spreading its contagion abilities, but in a competitive game, you can only really place it on your side of the board, and you have to remove a piece of terrain touching your deployment zone. And the Miasmic Malignifier is not big enough to hide, you know, your army behind. I would rather have a piece of obscuring terrain than the Miasmic Malignifier, because if my opponent is that close to me, then they have a problem. It gives light cover to units wholly within 6. I can set it up anywhere on the battlefield during deployment that is more than 12 from the enemy deployment zone and any enemy models. After a Miasmic Malignifier set up on the battlefield, you can set up one Pox Furnace terrain feature wholly within 6 inches of it and more than 12 inches away from the enemy deployment zone and enemy models. It's just, it can also be targeted, and it's only got 12 wounds. So if I was really worried about it, someone would probably just kill it, you know? And that's the whack part for me. After that, we kind of go into the weapon profiles, and those are what you'd expect out of a codex. So how do I feel about the Death Guard? I feel as though the Death Guard are a very good army to play. They're a very resilient army. Going into most matchups, sure, you may, if they have a lot of mortal wounds, or if they're really fast, you know, they may have the upper hand on you. But I feel as though the Death Guard have the ability to resist and hold strong during the more important parts of the game. So, you know, in those charge phases, like there's chances that you may not lose your entire army, whereas if you were playing something like CSM or Space Marines or Guard or AdMech, you'd be getting ripped apart. The fact that Death Guard reduce damage, they're really hard to hit because they're T5. Armor of Contempt means AP minus 1 is going to AP 0. You know, we're reducing AP by 1. It's just, it's a very stanky army, you know? And I mean, like, stank in a good way. I love the Death Guard. I think they have really come into their own here in the later part of ninth edition. Like, they were really good when they first came out in ninth edition, but then they kind of went into a slump. But now they're back, and they're just disgusting, and I love them. So, should you play them? Yes. How should you play them? However you want. Just don't take a Lord of Virulence. I mean, you can, it's your army, but I wouldn't. Anyway, y'all, I'm a tabletop hobbyist, and it was wonderful talking to you. I hope you enjoyed it, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know any other armies I should kind of talk about. I just got Death Guard on the mind, because I love them so much. And, ooh, you could take Abaddon with the Death Guard, and Abaddon is way better than Mortarion. I may have to actually look at that and compare the two one day. So yeah, Abaddon, real cool. He can be taken with Death Guard, so if you wanted to spend 300 points, why get Mortarion when you could have Abaddon? That's what I'm leaving off on. Hot take. Alright, goodbye everyone.